Hi, I'm Vince from Movies.ie. We're here today with Rogen and Paul Bird to talk about a new comedy, This Is the End, followed by some box pops from you guys. Enjoy.
I give This Is the End 8 out of 10. I thought it was ridiculous, but it was good fun, kept me entertained, and made me think.
I give This Is the End 9 out of 10. The reason, it's a different kind of film. It's the last time I've laughed as much at a film in a long time. So
we give This Is the End 8 out of 10. It was ridiculously funny.
And for the girls who like Channing Tatum, there's a big surprise.
I give This Is the End 8 out of 10. It was completely silly. Needed more David Krumholtz, but that's okay. And there's lovely surprises along the way and laugh a minute nearly.
I give This Is the End 7 out of 10. It was ridiculous, but it was ridiculous and entertaining throughout. Danny McBride was pretty hilarious. And yeah, it was relatively enjoyable.
I gave This Is the End 7 out of 10. I thought it was really funny. Thought the cast played well together. Yeah.
I give This Is the End 8 out of 10 because it was fucking nuts.
So, This Is the End. Guys, what did you think? Paul?
I think you first, Rogen. Yeah.
I was really surprised by This Is the End, mainly because there's been so many stoner comedies over recent years that actually haven't been that funny. But this is a film where celebrities send themselves up, they completely take the mick out of themselves, they play on the public image of themselves, and it's really funny, and it's quite a good disaster film as well.
Yeah, I think absolutely, and I think it's a brave thing in a way to go anywhere near your own persona, especially when you're relatively still, got a thriving career, that you've got to be careful with your image, and even someone like Franco, who's a love-hate figure for me. Sometimes I think he's wonderful, sometimes I think he's an ass. So I think his portrayal of himself in this, that he's got a self-loving kind of idea of his house is full of pretty much self-loving stuff, like with his portraits of himself and Seth Rogen and all these things. To me, it was almost like a super bad transported into a Hollywood setting where the friendship thing is so crucial to them. In one way they're fighting demons, but they're exercising ghosts about what it's like to be at this point in their careers and in this point of their lives, what it means to a friendship when you become famous, when one becomes more famous than another, how you judge each other's work. All those things sort of were playfully dealt with without sort of getting into any dark sort of psychosis about the nature of fame. And so I thought, huge amount of fun. I mean, naturally enough, in any apocalyptic movie, the third act gets a little bit, heavy and a little bit sort of, special effects laden. But even then, they still manage to retain that sort of slapstick quality that makes somebody like Danny McBride shine. When you put someone like him in these situations, he is Kenny Powers. He is the guy in Pineapple Express. He's an obnoxious, self-centered thug, from the south of the deep south, he's number one in the world, and everything about the world around him should serve what he wants, and it's just, he just does it so well.
Do you think it was a risk then, them all coming on character and playing these grotesque versions of themselves? I mean, it could have backfired.
I don't think so.
I think it was definitely a risk that they took, but they knew that there was enough love for their films out there and enough curiosity about them as people to make it work. I mean, yeah, okay, it was something that they tried to do, but it worked incredibly well.
And you think of Larry Sanders in Extras, if you have the good nature to go in and into a show and play up a dark kind of version of yourself, an ugly, kind of greedy, egotistical version of yourself, I mean, automatically audiences love you for that. Even those who fail, like Sting and people like that, have tried to come across, and Vic Reeves and Bob Mortimer, they try to do that trick of seemingly, mocking their own ego, and yet you still believe with someone like Sting, he's got a horrible big ego. Whereas with these guys, you kind of know that they're nervous about how they might be perceived. Like, I would think Seth Rogen walking down the street is slightly kind of still nervous about how people, might treat him. They seem to have that vulnerability about them, which is, very charming within a comedy like this, where you don't see them as a Tom Cruise or Will Smith figure, where they're completely robotic about their charm and they're completely robotic about their self-image. These guys are genuinely getting stoned, genuinely unsure about their careers, genuinely nervous about people liking their movies. And that comes across so well in this.
Even the fact that they spent 6 years making it, that they put 6 years worth of script into it, that they've been working on this for a very long time, right. So they knew that after 6 years...
I must say I'm glad that it didn't look like that, because sometimes those, you try to design a horse for so long, you end up with a camel. That sort of, I think that it looks like a horse. It looks like they, to me it was almost whose apocalypse is it now? Anyway, that sort of feeling of improv seemed to happen. Obviously there wasn't all improv, because they had great setup gags and they had great, Danny McBride giving Jonah Hill a hard time about his acting skill, even though he's been Oscar nominated. There's all these little moments where they've thought about what they could rip into each other about, and some of it I would think is spontaneous, but a lot of it they obviously just sat down and riffed on what would you say to me if you're in this moment, and it just, these are funny people, and they come up with funny stuff about how each scenario would be dealt with, you know, whether it's like the last bit of food, or you know, Emma Watson coming through the door, and how do you deal with her, and how do you talk about her when she's on her own, all these little moments of, you know, it's a Tarantino thing. I know he's not the instigator of it, but there are all those sort of conversations of two hitmen in a car talking about burgers, all those moments where you're talking about stuff in a sort of, you know, out of the action kind of way, where you're having these little moments of quiet together, and you talk about nonsense, or you talk about little fears or little ideas, when really you should be dealing with the demon who's banging at your door, you know.
I mean, comedies aren't supposed to get good reviews in general, but this one is riding high on Rotten Tomatoes at the moment. It's 85%. The American Top 10, it's the highest rated movie at the moment. And you know, I'm wondering, why do comedies generally not get good reviews, and why is this one seem to book the trend with critics?
Well, I'm going to say very quickly, partly I think it's because it's based in Hollywood, and Hollywood loves, you know, a little bit of self, you know, reference, and they'd find it funny, you know, the critics would find it funny that this is the world that they want to be part of and are part of and all that. But and then also it's funny,
which helps.
Yeah, there's some absolutely brilliant moments and brilliant lines in it. But the thing that made me laugh the most was people like Michael Cera playing an absolutely belligerently drunk, obnoxious version of himself. You know, slapping Rihanna's ass and stuff like that, and Emma Watson coming in with a foul mouth, and everyone's going, "Oh my God, Hermione's wielding an axe" and stuff like that. I think it was funny because these guys thought it was funny. They played on their own sense of humour, and they thought this was funny. They obviously had a good time doing it, and that's why it came across as funny to audiences.
Yeah, it's like Wayans with brains. Yeah, and I think if you get very famous people who are willing to send themselves up, even just at a moment like Channing Tatum's moment, we won't give it away, but those are great moments, because these people are money. Their agents may balk at the idea of what they do in a movie like this, but ultimately it's all for the good, because, you know, if you've got a good sense of humour about your own public image and your own sort of perception on screen, you know, it's a real big plus, because you kind of, you know, go with that person at the next movie. You feel that they have got a sense of purpose, a sense of, you know, perspective on what they're doing.
Surprisingly, only one actor turned it down when they got the script, and that was Morgan Freeman turned down a role in it. They wanted to be a godlike.
He's kind of parodied himself anyway, and we'll be talking about Now You See Me as well, and I think he is a type now. I mean, a lovely wise old man and all that, and he's the great voice of reason, and he has a bit of a sense of humour about himself, but he has become definitely, like, this is, you know, and writers must say this is the Morgan Freeman role. You know, it's just he has become the wise old man of Hollywood. You know, he's a Gandalf figure within Hollywood, really.
But he's also already done this sort of godlike figure in Bruce Almighty and things like that, so I could see why.
Sure, he didn't want to repeat the same character again.
Yeah.
So we give the score out of 10.
For this at the end, I'm going to give 8. I thought it was a brilliant movie. I think it was the most perfect movie, but incredibly funny and incredibly smart.
I give This Is the End 9 out of 10. It's the best stoner comedy we've seen in years.
That's a 6!
I give This Is the End 9 out of 10. It's the best stoner comedy in years, and you will be listening to the Backstreet Boys after seeing it.